So to reiterate, to pick up from the previous videos, we were discussing what democracy is not, and we see that democracy is not necessarily more efficient economically because it's open society, but it may not necessarily be open to trade and it might be protectionist, and that's where it may not be efficient economically. And then uh, it may not necessarily be efficient administratively. In fact, some of the authoritarian regimes are known for efficiency, and the whole. We will read in the future classes why China is still continue to be um, authoritarian or slash communist because it promises that economic and efficiency for its people, and that's how it continue to deliver that promise, and it is continuing to stay communist slash authoritarian as against the democracy. So democracy is not necessarily efficient administratively. And the next point is democracy is not always orderly, not necessarily consensual or stable um, or governable. We see that again in close home example in U.S. case, the previous Obama administration, out of 8 years, 6 years of no governance, nothing passed in Congress. Um, U.S. society decided to vote for Democrats in presidential election, but at the local level election, they decided to support Republican. And the next thing we see is there is lack of consensus, and you have a government shutdown in the current administration. Of course, it's not limited to current administration. You had that problem even previous administrations too. So it's not necessarily stable, and there is a lot of polarization happening right now in a democratic society like us in US. So it's not always uh, stable, consensual. The, so we see that democracy need not always be a silver bullet, uh, which we anticipate it to be. So the another readings which we have this week is a famous political scientist Dahl, Robert Dahl, and he proposes polyarchy. Archy means rule, poly means many, like how you have thearchy. Thearchy is ruled by autarky, like ruled by authority regime. So archy means rule, and polyarchy means rule by many. That's what um, um, Dahl proposes is what facilitates democracy. He also mentions that keeping military peripheral and professional also helps democracy. What it means is military should not have a main say in the government. So we see that in many African regimes and even some of the Asian countries like Pakistan, where military often has the power, and it's a big hindrance to democratic functioning of society. So he suggests the military has to be at the peripheral level without any direct power in the say of the government. So that's one thing. As I mentioned, we should just skip in the readings. I mentioned very clearly to just skim the first 10 minutes. So it's not the point here what we are concentrating. The important point I wanted to concentrate is about his ideas of democracy and its um, the three main points which he brings up. I wanted you to concentrate Robert Dahl's points on democracy. So the first thing is dispersal of power. So dispersal of power, as in modern capitalism, uh, we see that the power is not concentrated with few individuals. We see in the modern day Russia where few it's a system of oligarchy where few oil barons control most of the power. But as against this, Dahl argues, the dispersal of power is what needed for in democracy, and that is aided by this modern capitalism, where mm, you where you can succeed, where you can have the belief that economically, if you can succeed, you can also have a say in political life too. And capitalism provides such opportunity. It rewards various groups of people. Uh, Previously it was farmers, and then the industrial revolution took place, and then you have the auto industry, which was powerful. Our auto industry have the same power now? No, it has shifted to tech industry. So it basically such dispersal of power across the various group of people within the society is what aids democracy. And such and there is dispersal of power not necessarily in the government, in the people, but also in the government, in the various organs of government, which is clearly brought out in the United States through separation of powers and checks and balances, what we have. So, such dispersal of power is very conducive to democracy. And the second point he brings out is the certain beliefs, attitudes, and ideologies are is that needs to be important for democracy. And first thing he brings out is the capitalism again. Here, the belief that capitalism anyone can succeed if you are free and if you can work towards your ideas, you can succeed in economically, and that economic success also translates to political. You can formulate and you can participate in political life, and it is that idea, that capitalistic belief that and everyone can win if you have the idea and if you have that free will, you can succeed. It's that belief is what contributes to uh, the democracy or the success of democracy. And the other thing he's against is organized religion. Um, it, his argument is organized religion is hierarchical, be it like following a particular person or a book or a text. Organized religion is too hierarchical, and that might not be conducive to democracy. Um, Somebody who follows a particular religion may not believe in uh, free speech or free ideas. He might just follow but he might have belief in a particular leader or um, particular text, and then he might not participate democratically and express his or her own opinion. So, organized religion in that way is not conducive for democracy. And next important point he brings out is uh, democracy should have few competing subculture. It's little bit um, controversial. When he says that, is he against diversity? Is he against diversity of opinion? No, that is not what he is saying. If you are familiar with the readings of Madison, one of the founding members of Constitution, Madison was for various competing factions. Um, the belief is that if you have multiple competing factions, uh, you you always the losers will always get a chance to align with other factions and try to win the next election. That's the idea. So, for example, if the environmentalist interest lose the election, they can align with other factions and then try to win the election next time. So that's the idea of Madison, that if you have more factions, it's good conducive to democracy. But Dahl is of the opinion you should have very few competing subculture. So what he's trying to say is, you know, it's good to have a different faction politically, like if you are a Democrat or if you are a Republican, you can change your political view based on what you see, what you hear in the news, in the information you get. Some might say suddenly, yes, we need more government in our society. So then you can switch from Republican to Democrat or vice versa. But if your ideas and beliefs come from a culture, from your ethnicity, from those values are difficult to change, and you might not willing to make the changes, and that's where societies based or divided on race, ethnicity, have this problem of functioning democratically. So that's what he meant, like having a few competing subcultures are conducive to democracy. So it's not necessarily that he's against having diversity of opinion, but he was proposing here to have fewer subculture, which might be conducive to democracy. In that sense, basically saying we shouldn't be having too many like subcultures competing in a democracy. So these are the three key takeaways which I want you to take from Robert Dahl: the dispersal of power, certain beliefs and attitudes, and few competing subculture are what aid polyarchy, which is what is helpful for democracy. So with that, I think you might uh, pretty much by this now you should get an idea like how you did in the quiz, because the quiz covered basically these two readings, Robert Dahl's and Schmitzer's reading. So on Monday, I will talk a little bit about the Democratic Index and where the United States figure in that latest Democratic Index. Um, Hope you had a good week, and we'll talk about Democratic Index in class on Monday.